Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently had the chance to visit my local magistrates' court in Cannock, and they told me that a major barrier to ramping up sitting days in both magistrates and Crown courts is the lack of legal advisors. I'm told many are leaving the Crown Prosecution Service because the pay is often better, but that means they're having to cut back on sitting time. So could my right honourable friend outline what steps the Ministry is taking to increase the number of legal advisors in our courts?
Or the honourable gentleman will be pleased that we are recruiting more legal advisors. We are increasing capacity in the system. He's right that magistrates' court particularly are the bedrock of the system, which is why I was so appalled that the last government cut back our magistrates' courts so extensively. It's important that we support our magistrates to do very important work.
Ross Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crown Court courtrooms are sitting empty for up to 75% of the time. Judges used to be booking in trials 3 to 6 months into the future. Now they're booking well into 2027 or even into 2028. This is to save the cost of bringing in a recorder at £830 a day. But these cases still need to be tried at some point, so it's not actually saving costs, it's just deferring them. And in the meantime, there is a terrible impact on the complainants and, in fact, on justice itself. Can the Secretary of State say what he's going to do to clear this backlog and make sure that cases come to trial? Thank you.
The Honourable Lady is completely right, and victims have got to see justice being done in real time, and that's why we asked Brian Leverson to do the second part of his review, which is on efficiencies, which goes to the heart of her question.
Liz Twist.
Mr. Speaker, some cases are now being listed for 2029. This is completely unacceptable. What is the Secretary of State doing to undo the harm inflicted by the party opposite, not just on the justice system itself, but on trust that justice will be found?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. The inheritance was shocking, and at the heart of it were victims suffering. And what we're doing is increasing those sitting days, which are hugely important. I was very pleased to meet with the Lady Chief Justice last week to discuss what more we can do. And of course, we will get on and implement the Leverson review to ensure that we deal with that terrible inheritance.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish the right honourable gentleman the very best in his new appointment. But he's obviously presiding over a complicated system. Today, 74 out of 516 Crown Court rooms are empty. Can he comment on why that situation exists today and when the second part of the Leverson report will come into effect? So when we will know when he's going to take action on the greater complexity that has not yet been evaluated.
Well, he's right that we do have to build systems capacity to use courtrooms better, and I can tell him that Sir Brian Leverson, and I was very grateful to Sir Brian for coming to see me whilst he was completing his review as Foreign Secretary because of my experience in the criminal justice system. He's completing his review by the end of the year.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the most effective steps taken by this government to help reduce the Crown Court backlog is the record increases to criminal legal aid. Fewer criminal barristers and solicitors won't help tackle case waiting times. Scotland is experiencing unacceptable delays in solemn cases coming to trial, made worse by inadequate funding of Scottish legal aid by the Scottish Government. Does the Minister agree with me that unless we significantly increase legal aid fees across the UK, the current criminal defence model is unsustainable and we risk the collapse of our court system?
Well, my honourable friend highlights almost 2 decades of the SNP running Scotland into the ground. Here we've had a record increase of 92 million. And on the day in which we introduced Hillsborough Law, it's hugely important to also record that this is the biggest extension of legal aid for people who suffered at the hands of the state in over a decade.
Speaker, rape is a heinous and despicable crime with lifelong consequences for victims. Some don't survive. According to the House of Commons Library, the average number of days from charge to case completion is 363 days. What time does the government think is acceptable for delivering justice for rape victims? Do they have a target? What is it? And what steps are they taking to reach it?
We've got to have swifter justice for victims of rape. When I was Shadow Justice Secretary, I was appalled that under the last government we got to a position where we'd almost decriminalised the situation because there were so few prosecutions. But there has to be justice, and that means swifter justice.
Mr Osborne.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. In West Kent, in particular, there is an initiative going on which is sharing the resource of Maidstone Crown Court with Woolwich Crown Court, which is spreading cases into areas where there is not such a backlog. Can the government indicate to me whether or not that is being openly considered in other parts of the country so that we can spread the backlog across different areas?
It's absolutely the case that where courts are coming together and being proactive, we are seeing progress. I look forward to looking more closely at the example of Maidstone and Woolwich, but he's absolutely right, that's the way forward.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Of 221 people arrested for supporting Palestine action, 162 were arrested under Section 13 of the Terrorism Act. This prohibits people from, quote, carrying articles in public which arouse reasonable suspicion that an individual is a member or supporter of a proscribed organisation. Even the protesters who displayed those sickening pictures of Hamas paragliders in the week after the 7th of October were each given a conditional discharge. Can the government please look again at the Terrorism Act to avoid clogging up the criminal justice system with people whose real motive is to support action on Palestine?
Well, I'm always happy to do anything I did in my last role, and I'll do it in this role, to ensure that anyone terrorising is convicted. That is quite properly a matter for law enforcement and prosecutors, but I'll examine the detail of what he says.
Peter Lamb.
Mr Speaker, I have met with constituents who have been victims of some of the most serious offences and who have been waiting for years before the general election to have access to justice. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss how I can ensure that my constituents have timely access to justice?
Well, the honourable gentleman is right. We've got to ensure that the system works for victims. Under the last government, we saw half of all magistrates' courts close, and in December 2023, the Crown Court backlog stood at an increase of 77%. We're dealing with that, and we've got to deal with it as swiftly as possible, and of course, I'll ensure that he meets with the appropriate minister.
Mark Pritchard.
Speaker, with your permission, I'd just like to pay tribute to my predecessor, who's mentioned on the face of the order paper today, who was killed in 1940. The Justice Secretary keeps referring to the last government, and I sort of get that, but just to remind him that this new government has been in post for, 14, 15 months, over a year. So at some point, that's all going to wear very thin, that particular argument. Is he aware of the extraordinary length to which victims of serious sexual assault and crimes have to wait in the Shropshire courts, in particular Shrewsbury Crown Court, double the 363 days that we have just heard from the Lib Dem benches? What is he going to do to help those victims and also those defendants that may, on occasion, be innocent?
Well, look, the honourable member and I are friends across this House, but I do have to say to him, and he should say to his constituents, that under the last government we saw devastating cuts to the police, 20,000. We saw no building of prisons at all, effectively, only 500 places. We saw the probation service decimated, and we are rebuilding it. and we saw a reduction in sitting days. All of that we've had to get on with. And yes, we've made some strides in 14 months, but the devastation was big. It's going to take a bit longer.
Polly Billington.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Justice Secretary.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 2 and 10 together. We're determined to back our hard-working probation staff by investing up to £700 million by the final year of the spending review and investing an initial £8 million in new technology to reduce administrative burdens. We're also going to recruit 1,300 trainee probation officers in the next year.
Polly Billington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for his reply. Probation officers I have spoken to are supportive of the early release scheme, inasmuch as it was necessary to deal with the chronic overcrowding in our prisons, a legacy of the last government's dereliction of duty. Many offenders on the fixed recall scheme with a determinate sentence, however, are not being risk assessed before re-release, and that concerns probation officers. In that context, can the Secretary of State indicate what measures he is putting in place to ensure probation officers are able to do their job with offenders being released early?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and I was with probation officers last week. It was the first visit I've done as Secretary of State, and it was important that probation was the first place I went to, because the work that they do and the staff and the dedication is immense, and we're working with the Home Office to ensure that those risk assessments are done.
Rick Godman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituency of Chelmsford is an important hub for the justice system in Essex. It's home to several courts, including a Crown Court. The independent sentencing review led by David Gawke found that the reoffending rate for those who were homeless or rough sleeping was double that of those who had accommodation to go to upon release. Indeed, I've heard examples from charities where those on probation have been recalled to prison simply because they have no fixed address. At a time when prison places are so limited, what steps is the Justice Secretary taking to ensure that such frustrating examples of recall stop? And how does he intend to work with the Interministerial Group for Homelessness and Rough Sleeping to ensure that the probation service's work isn't undermined by lack of accommodation upon release from prison?
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady, and no doubt she will be contributing to the debate a little later with our sentencing bill. This was an issue that was raised with me by probation workers last week. It remains a big issue in our system, made worse by the last government, and I commit to working closely with MCHLD colleagues to ensure that that housing is available.
To the Select Committee on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome my friend back to his rightful place here? I remember being a junior shadow minister under him. I'll try to be less deferential in my current role. He rightly says the government is recruiting new probation officers in order for the new responsibilities under the sentencing bill and to deal with early release. The BBC recently reported, however, there's a 10,000 shortage in probation officers. How are we going to match that gap? Because probation service is absolutely essential to the strategy that he is rightly following now.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman and I did a lot of work together whilst the probation service was decimated, a badly botched privatisation that ruined such an incredible service. He's right, we're going to need to recruit more. The 700 million that we found is essential, and I'll be looking closely at those allocations over the coming months.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for that response. I wish to pay a tribute, if I can, to the probation officers in Northern Ireland who do an excellent job. I've met them on regular occasions. They're magnificent. On many occasions they have to deal with young people who, due to peer pressure, find themselves influenced to do things which they normally wouldn't do. Restorative justice has become one of the ways of trying to make things better. Can I ask the Minister on that issue, has there been a direct programme and focus and strategy within the government to ensure that restorative justice can be the way of rehabilitating young people and giving them the chance to have a better life? Thank you.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman, and he brings a lot of experience to these issues, and in many ways some of what he's reflecting on is an issue in a constituency like mine, and I hope he will be making a contribution in the debate later on the sentencing bill.
Just Barbara, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I welcome the new Justice Secretary and the new Sentencing Minister to their places. Now, the Probation Service relies on an effective tagging system in order to keep our communities safe. But the £300 million contract that the last government awarded to Serco has resulted in lots of failures, some of which I saw up close when I shadowed them over the summer, of wrong addresses, for example, being provided, which means multiple failed visits and a failure to tag those offenders that need to be tagged. So will the Deputy Prime Minister commit to telling us how much Serco have been fined in their contract? And will he commit to strengthening those penalties so that we ensure that private contractors aren't rewarded for failure?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question. He's right that the record from Serco was poor and unacceptable. We've stepped in, we have fined them. I can't say how much because it's commercially sensitive, but what I can tell you is that I intend to hold them to account. The job that they do is immensely important in terms of public confidence.
Question 3, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 3 and 24 together. For years, our court buildings under the last government were left to crumble and decay. This government has boosted capital funding from £120 million last year to over £148 million for this year. From Reading to Blackpool, we are building new courts and restoring old ones.
Well, look forward to Chorley's then. Betty Gittins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. Prestatyn Justice Centre and its hard-working staff provide a vital service to my constituents. But on a recent visit, it was clear to me that the building needs investment. Could she update the House on what the government is doing to repair and modernise our court estate? And would she look at what can be done to support our facility in Prestatyn?
Well, I thank her for her question, and she's right that the Prestatyn Justice Centre provides a valuable facility for her community. We've got a number of projects planned in the pipeline for Wales. Obviously, we've got to prioritise those court buildings most in need, where there's most disrepair, so we can bring them back into use. But I'm happy for her to write to me about her particular case.
Catherine Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Since 2019, my constituents in Lancaster have had to look at a ring of steel fencing around the Lancaster courthouse as it waits for maintenance work that can make this more sightly in our city centre. So can I ask the Minister how much longer my constituents will have to wait to have this maintenance done, because it has been there since 2019?
I thank her for her question. I understand that people in Lancaster have been using the Crown Court in nearby Preston, which provides a more modern and accessible facility. We're currently undertaking a consultation about the future of Lancaster Crown Court, but again, I'm happy to respond to her in more detail about the timeline.
Greg Camp.
Mr Speaker, would the Minister agree that access to justice is very important, particularly in rural areas when sometimes people have to travel either as witnesses or as family support to people appearing in court, and that it is absolutely vital to try and maximise the accessibility for people like that?
He is absolutely right. When we talk about access to justice, that's got to mean access to justice in every single respect, and there is no more obvious demonstration of that than the accessibility to the door of the court. That is why we undertake continuous review of our court estate to ensure that it is accessible, physically accessible to all users.
Jack Rankin.
Question number 4, Mr Speaker.
Just Secretary.
The safety of our prison staff is a #1 priority for me, and that's why we're investing £40 million to stop the contraband that puts our hard-working staff particularly at risk. We're also rolling out protective body armour for use in the highest security units and trialling the use of tasers for specialised staff.
Joe Rankin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thousands of drones are being used to smuggle contraband like weapons and drugs into prisons. Locally, I've met leading security company Preventive Concepts, and the Shadow Lord Chancellor was good enough to visit them in France to see their technology in action, detecting and disabling drones. So what specific steps is his department taking to roll out drone detection capabilities across the prison estate, and are they currently engaging directly with private stakeholders like Preventive Concepts?
I did see the Shadow Lord Chancellor had been visiting France, and I looked seriously at what he was proposing, and I looked closely at it, and I propose to make some announcements in this area over the coming weeks.
Ray Morris.
Thank you. Last week in Brighton, the TUC unanimously backed the Safe Inside campaign promoted by the Joint Unions and Prisons Alliance, calling for urgent action against record high levels of prison violence and second-hand exposure to psychoactive substances. Does the Minister agree current conditions are quite intolerable for prison staff, and the prison service needs to be held directly accountable for the health and safety of everyone who works in prisons, all of whom deserve to be safe inside?
Yeah. I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for that question. We're talking to the unions. The £40 million that we put in, I hope, will be able to alleviate some of the problems. But he's right that the assaults on our staff are entirely unacceptable. And that's why I'm committing from the dispatch box today to making further announcements in the coming days.
Shadow Minister Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House would join me in paying tribute to the murdered prison officer Lenny Scott, whose killer was found guilty and sentenced over the recess. It's hard to overstate the seriousness of that case. This was a prison officer murdered for simply doing his job. Like police officers, every day we ask prison officers to stand up to some of the most violent people in our society. Does the new Lord Chancellor agree with me that prison officers deserve the same legal protections that police officers have?
The work that prison officers do is incredible. The work that our prison governors do is incredible. Over the course of both my career in law and my career in this House, I've visited so very, very many prisons, and I pay tribute to their work, and certainly I will be looking very closely at this issue, and I hope to come forward with more announcements in the coming days.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Thank you, and I'm sure prison officers will welcome any future announcements he makes. We've talked in the House just this morning about preventative measures that we can take to ensure prison officer safety, but police officers benefit from legal protections in terms of the consequences for murdering them. If you kill a police officer, there is a mandatory whole life order imposed for the person that does that. We will be laying an amendment to the sentencing bill to bring that same protection to prison officers. I think they deserve it. I would welcome the support of the new Lord Chancellor for that measure.
It's a serious issue, and I'll certainly consider it, and I know that the Law Commission are certainly looking at similar provisions.
Steph Ackworth.
Question 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to tackling the root causes of reoffending. This means investing in services which turn offenders away from a life of crime and instead back on the straight and narrow, and this includes services in employment, accommodation and substance misuse treatment.
Steph Ackworth.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. I welcome him to his place. We have a prison population crisis, but rather than building or releasing our way out of it, we have to reduce reoffending. I recently visited HMP Bureau in my constituency and saw the excellent work internally they've been doing to support prisoners in learning new skills and equip them for life after release. Can the Secretary of State or the Minister assure me that the government will support and provide funding for programmes like these, and would he meet with me to hear more about the fantastic work of the staff at HMP Bureau?
The government are committed to tackling reoffending, and that includes investment in services exactly like that which the honourable member visited. We are building more prison places because we need to. After 14 years, the Conservatives added just 500 additional prison places. In 14 months, we've added 2,500. But alongside that, we have to tackle reoffending, and I hope he'll be supporting the sentencing bill later this afternoon, which will do that.
Okay. Right, Dr. Becky Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, rehabilitation is a vital part of prison health programmes, but when prisoners develop infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, they can be isolated from organised programmes such as rehab. Given the risk that interrupted TB treatment can fuel antimicrobial resistance, what steps is the Department taking to ensure prisoners receive both uninterrupted medical care and continued access to rehabilitation?
We have to, as I've said, I welcome the statement. I'm going to be talking with colleagues from the Department of Health on exactly that issue and tackling reoffending, making sure that treatment in prisons so that prisoners are rehabilitated, because the sole focus of this government is to stop reoffending, to cut down on crime, and that means working with prisoners as well as the sentencing bill that I hope the honourable member will be contributing to the debate later today.
Number 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is vital that victims feel supported at court. The Ministry of Justice funds the National Witness Service, which provides support on the day of trial, and independent sexual violence advocates can accompany victims while they are in the courtroom. Pre-trial, victims can receive support from victim liaison officers or from the MOJ-funded victim support services, and that is available throughout their criminal justice journey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome our new Minister and Justice Secretary to their places? I have heard far too many stories from constituents who have endured sexual violence and rape. They tell me how isolating and intimidating the court system can feel and how difficult it can be to get the support that they need. Can the Minister reassure me and those constituents that this government is doing everything it can to ensure that victims and survivors of rape and sexual violence are supported in a timely manner?
I thank my honourable friend for that important question. She is a tireless advocate for all victims of violence against women and girls, and she will know that this government is committed to supporting these victims in court through measures like Section 28, the Witness Service and our victim liaison officers. But to further support victims, the Ministry of Justice also funds support services such as independent sexual violence advocates and independent domestic violence advocates. We are also committed to introducing free independent legal advisors for victims of adult rape across England and Wales, and I will be hoping to announce more on this measure soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Louise reported her sexual assault to the police back in 2021. She's had court dates pushed back twice, and her court date now, her trial is expected in December 2026, nearly 6 years after reporting it to the police. What assessment has the Minister made of the impact such delays have on victims, survivors who are also witnesses, and the impact on the quality of that eventual court case?
Well, I thank the honourable member for that really important question, and I all my thoughts are with Louise, and sadly there's so many like her who are waiting for justice. We know that justice delayed is justice denied. That is why we asked Sir Brian Leverson to conduct this once-in-a-generation reform of our criminal court system, so we could ensure that we have a criminal justice system fit for the future, to break down on that backlog in our court cases so that victims like Louise are no longer waiting for justice.
Pam Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Justice Committee heard evidence about the use of special measures to support vulnerable or intimidated witnesses to give their best evidence, and this is obviously so important in rape and sexual assault cases. Will the Minister again reaffirm her support for the continuing use of those measures, despite some debate about the evidence of their effectiveness?
I thank my honourable friend, and I was pleased to attend the Justice Select Committee to discuss how important Section 28 is to vulnerable witnesses and victims, and the difference it is making by allowing victims specifically of rape and sexual offence crimes to be able to maintain within the justice system. It allows them to give their evidence in a safe manner that is more accessible to them. And in a justice system where currently 60% of rape victims are withdrawing from the process because of the backlog, because of the waits, because of how traumatic it is, anything that helps them maintain in that criminal justice system is something worth championing.
Liz Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent waited 18 months to face her abuser in court, only to be told the day before the trial was supposed to begin that it had been postponed until May 2026. How are victims of domestic abuse supposed to get redress and closure when they face such intolerable delays?
It is sadly unacceptable that this is being allowed to carry on in our courts, and that is why we are taking that fundamental reform, because without victims, we wouldn't have a criminal justice system. It is important that we put them at the heart of this. We are funding independent domestic abuse advocates to support victims, to get them through the system quicker. We are committed to rolling out more specialist domestic abuse courts. That was one of the clear recommendations in the Leverson review, and something that the Courts Minister and I are working closely on to support victims. But I'll happily discuss this further with the honourable member to ensure that we get this right for victims of DA.
So, Secretary of State Robert Generley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Child sex offenders destroy the lives of their victims. So why did the Justice Secretary, as Foreign Secretary, appoint the best pal, a known business partner, of one of the world's most notorious paedophiles, as our ambassador to Washington? And what message does the Minister think this sends to the victims of rape and child sex abuse here in the UK?
Child sexual abuse is some of the most abhorrent crimes in our society. That is why it is this government that is enacting the recommendations of the Grooming Gangs Inquiry. It is this why we have kicked off the review into making sure that victims get the justice they so deserve. It is why today we are introducing a Hillsborough Law, a groundbreaking law to ensure that never again victims and survivors have to wait decades for truth and justice.
Robert Jenrick.
The Minister couldn't answer.
Ignore the question.
Because it's simply indefensible. And she knows it. Yeah. Everyone in this House knows it. Everyone knows it. On Sunday, the family of one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, said that Mandelson should never have been appointed. I agree. Almost every person in this country agrees. Did the Justice Secretary not read the papers which detailed Mandelson's extensive connections to Epstein after he had been convicted? Or did he read them and flippantly disregard the crimes and pain he caused so many? And will the Minister take this opportunity in her role to apologise on behalf of the Justice Secretary to Epstein's victims?
Just say, look, I understand the point that's been raised. It's a very, very important point. We are getting a long distance from the original question. Just play. I'm well aware, and I certainly don't need to be. What I'm trying to say is we have got a 3-hour debate coming up on the set subject, so hopefully the Minister can respond.
Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Justice Secretary says from a seated position that this is about justice for victims. If this was really about justice for victims, in 14 years of his government, he would have carried out reforms to ensure that victims get swift justice. Instead, he presided over a criminal justice system that is at breaking point, where victims are waiting years for their day in court, where prisons are overflowing and we are unable to ensure that there is always a space available. It is this government that is ensuring there will always be a prison place available. It is this government that is getting on with carrying out the recommendations of the National Grooming Inquiry. It is this government that takes victims and justice serious.
Question number 13, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 15th of July, the Fuller Inquiry recommended introducing statutory recommendations and regulation for funeral directors. The Government recognises the urgency of the concerns raised and it is carefully considering all of these recommendations. The Government has committed to responding to the inquiry with an interim update on progress this year and a final response will be given by summer 26.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. The Minister will also be aware of the plight of Zoe Ward and Cody Townend, 2 mums from Leeds who tragically lost babies in different circumstances but who both went to the same funeral director who did not treat their babies' bodies with the dignity, care or respect that they deserved. Despite the shocking details of these cases, the police found nothing actionable because the funeral sector is not regulated in any way. Will the Minister commit to meeting with Zoe, with Cody and with me to discuss these horrific cases, but also talk about how quickly we can regulate the law in this area to ensure what happened to them never happens to anyone ever again?
The whole House will be utterly horrified at the case of Zoe and Cody and what they have had to go through. Dignity for our deceased is something that we should all uphold as something that is fundamentally important. I and my colleagues across government are committed to ensuring that we get funeral regulation right, and I'm working with colleagues in MHCLG, the Department for Health and the Department for Business and Trade, and I would be honoured to meet with my honourable friend Zoe and Cody to discuss this further.
Question 16, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, supporting victims and witnesses is key to ensuring offenders are brought to justice. There are measures in place to support victims. We've already discussed those measures, such as Section 28 and the Ministry of Justice funded Victim Service and Witness Service. The Witness Service provides emotional and practical on-the-day support to help prosecution and defence witnesses in criminal courts across England and Wales because we need them to be able to give their best evidence possible.
Caroline Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with a constituent who had served as a juror in a very distressing child sexual abuse case. And she highlighted the profound impact that such trials can have, not just on the witnesses themselves, but also on the jurors who may experience trauma and even PTSD. So, while the appointment of the new Victims Commissioner is welcome, could the Minister outline what support is available for jurors who have to cope with the impact of the evidence that they see and hear in distressing cases such as this?
The Honourable Member makes a really important point, and I would like to take this opportunity to put on record my thanks to everyone who takes part in their civic duty by taking part in jury service. You know, juries are a cornerstone of our justice system and they carry out an important function. There is support available for jurors, and I'm so sorry to hear of her constituent's situation. And if she wants to write to me, I'll happily look into this more and work with her on what more we can do to support jurors who do such a brilliant job.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Billy Boyack saw his wife Angela and son Stephen killed in a head-on collision. The driver responsible initially showed no remorse and was already banned from the area under bail conditions. He only received a 13-year sentence. How does my honourable friend intend on redressing this unfairness in our sentencing laws where victims like Billy suffer such an injustice?
Well, all my thoughts are with Billy and the family for the horrific tragedy that they have suffered. The Honourable Member will know that we are currently debating later today the sentencing bill, looking at how we redress the balance here. But the Law Commission is also doing a special piece of work looking at homicide law, and I would happily discuss this with her and Billy to discuss how best we can support them.
Motion to call over.
Number 18, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst there is a long-term downward trend in the rate of proven reoffending, we remain, as a country, an outlier in this regard. That is why the government is taking action to reduce reoffending, especially amongst prolific offenders. This includes measures in the sentencing bill on short-term sentencing, community punishment, investment in regional employment councils to bring local partners together to help offenders into work, and the rolling out of intensive supervision courts, which have incredibly encouraging results so far.
Motion to call over.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also welcome my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Justice, and his new ministerial team to their roles. The Clink charity has delivered life-changing rehabilitation at HMP Brixton for over a decade, significantly reducing reoffending rate. Indeed, graduates are 64% less likely to reoffend. However, they have recently been told that they must compete in a commercial procurement process alongside large corporations to continue operating at Brixton. This risks disadvantaging an award-winning charity with a proven track record that is having a positive impact. So does the Minister agree with me that this is unfair, and can he reassure me that he will review this situation to ensure procurement processes consider the excellent work already being achieved by organisations like the Clink?
I thank the honourable member for a question. The answer is yes. I'm very aware of the great work that Clink does, as I know the Justice Secretary is and the Prison Minister is in the other place, and we'll be reviewing what has happened there and what is happening there in due course.
Blackman.
Mr. Speaker, one of the key ways to reduce reoffending is to ensure that ex-offenders leaving prison have got a secure place to live and are not tempted to go back to a life of crime. One of the consequences of early release, however, can be that is not prepared in advance. So what action is the Minister going to take to ensure that prison governors and those involved in the prison service ensure that ex-offenders are going into secure accommodation once they leave prison?
The honourable member raises a really important point and challenge for the probation service as the sentencing bill hopefully comes into fruition. I was with the Justice Secretary just last week, meeting with probation staff. Housing is a big challenge, and I will be working with colleagues from across government to ensure that we are up to that challenge. But the honourable member makes a good point, and I'll be updating the House in due course as well.
Start with topicals, Becky Gibson.
Question 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's my honour to take my first oral questions as Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary. Today, the government will introduce the Public Office Accountability Bill, better known as Hillsborough Law. It will create a new professional and legal duty of candour, placing public servants under a duty to act with honesty and integrity at all times. It will be backed by a new offence for misleading the public, along with 2 new offences for misconduct in public office. Mr. Speaker, this is a historic moment.
Hear, hear.
But the credit belongs not to the government, but to the families of the 97, whose courage never faltered, and to all who fought for justice. After Grenfell, after Windrush, after Infected Blood and the Horizon scandal, this law will be their legacy. We cannot rewrite history, Mr. Speaker, but with the Hillsborough Law, we can ensure it never repeats itself again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Secretary of State's passionate remarks? 71% of young people in the youth justice system have a speech and language need which may impact their ability to access justice, and only a tiny fraction of these have received any speech and language support. How is the Secretary of State working across government, particularly with the Departments of Health and Education, to prevent these vulnerable young people being disproportionately drawn into the youth justice system?
Very grateful to the Honourable Lady. I remain very concerned particularly about neurodiversity in young people and how they fare in the criminal justice system, and I will be looking closely at the youth justice system and working with colleagues in the Health Department and of course in education.
Robert Jenrick, shall us...
Well, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Justice Secretary to his place. The only one-in, one-out deal that's working in this government is the one for Deputy Prime Ministers. Just last month, the country was crying out that the Right Honourable Member must face justice after his scandalous failure to register a licence for fish. Well, he thought he was off the hook, but finally, Mr. Speaker, it is justice for Lammy. Now, I know that the Honourable Gentleman has a previous and rather traumatic experience with one John Humphreys on Mastermind, so I hope that he's sitting comfortably. How many foreign nationals are clogging up our prisons, and does he still stand by the letter that he signed which opposed the removal of 50 foreign criminals, one of whom went on to murder?
I'm going to look forward to this, Mr. Speaker. I know that the Honourable Gentleman is so good that my predecessor was promoted. And I know that he's auditioning for another job. But let me be clear. Returns under this government have gone up 14%, and I took a keen interest as Foreign Secretary. They will be going up further.
Well, I'll give it to the Justice Secretary. That was a better reply than the one when he was asked which monarch succeeded Henry VIII, and he said Henry VII. But it wasn't the answer that I was asking for. In fact, there are 10,772 foreign nationals in our prisons, and that, Mr. Speaker, has gone up under Labour. The obstacle to so many of their removals is the European Convention on Human Rights, which has morphed into a charter for criminals. The last Justice Secretary pretended that you could reform the ECHR, but the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, has stated that that position is, and I quote, a political trick. Is it a trick that this Justice Secretary intends on playing on the British public?
I've got to tell you, I know that the Honourable Gentleman was a corporate lawyer, but he really needs to get into the detail. We are reforming the sentencing bill so that you can get people out of the country, deport them on sentencing. Get into the weeds and look at the bill. I've got to tell him, you can do better.
Mike Reader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to have to raise a quite harrowing case from my constituency. An 84-year-old mother and grandmother reported being sexually assaulted in her care home by one of the workers. Now, when this was reported, it was found that that care worker was already being investigated for a number of similar assaults. Now, the family have waited over a year already to get into court, and they've now been told they'll have to wait till 2026. So will the Minister meet with me to review this case? But importantly also, the family ask, can we look at how we learn from this to improve the system for other families?
I'm deeply troubled by his constituent's case, and of course I'm happy to meet with him. It's hard to think of a more graphic illustration of what we mean when we say justice delayed is justice denied, and it's exactly why this government is gripping the backlog in our courts, record sitting days, increased sentencing powers for magistrates, and proposing once in a generation bold reform of our criminal courts.
Just Member and the Liberal Democrat spokesman.
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to associate myself with the comments of the Deputy Prime Minister on the bravery of the Hillsborough families and pay tribute to them for the success that's been landed today. Many of us across this House are deeply concerned that domestic abusers are weaponising the family court to perpetrate their abuse. Now, efforts to reform this have not yet been forthcoming from this government, and we need change. So will the Deputy Prime Minister commit to, in the next King's speech, legislating for reform of the family court so that it supports survivors and does not sabotage them any longer?
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. We are determined to look at this lacuna that exists for victims of domestic violence. We will look for it, and if necessary, we will come forward with further amendments or indeed legislation.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also associate myself with your remarks discussing the remarkable achievements of the Hillsborough campaigners. Last week I met with Sir Optimist International members in Stafford who raised concerns about mothers in Drake Hall Prison in my constituency. Every year 17,000 children have their mothers go to prison, and yet only 9% are taken care of by their fathers. So where do those 15,000 children go, and what steps is the Minister taking to ensure children of women in prison are properly identified and taken care of?
I'm grateful to the honourable member for a really important question. I've worked with the amazing charity Children Seen Not Heard prior to getting this role. I'm determined to make sure we do more to protect children of prisoners. And in terms of female prisoners, the Prisons Minister in the other place is already working with the Women's Justice Board to look at better ways in which we can treat and ensure that women prisoners are rehabilitated too.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My team and I support many families navigating the SEND system, and one of the challenges is delays in getting access to tribunal justice. As he gets to grip with his new role, will he make shortening those delays one of his priorities, and can you update the House accordingly?
He raises a very important point. We know that the success rate of appeals in our tribunals and the level of delays in the SND tribunals are indeed severe, and that has a huge impact on children and families. It's why we're sitting close to maximum sitting days across all our jurisdictions to bear down on those delays, but I'll certainly take his point on board as we look to reform the SEND system.
Laura Coates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The formidable team at Aylesbury Women's Aid report continued severe delays in the charging and prosecution of domestic abuse cases. We're in touch about one survivor who lives in constant fear of her abuser, who turns up at her house, taps on her windows at night, despite a warrant being out for his arrest. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure that survivors are not left living in fear while they wait for justice?
Thank you. Yes, the honourable member raises really important points. The sentencing bill that we'll be debating later today has really important measures which I think will protect victims of domestic abuse and ensure that victims are at the heart of our criminal justice policy, as well as probation services too.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents has been told their Crown Court case won't be heard until 2028, 6 years after their alleged offence occurred. The delay was due to court closures and a lack of capacity locally. The government really shouldn't need a report to tell them that they need to make more courts to be made available at more times, and they need to fund our courts properly. We've had questions about this around the chamber already, so I'm going to take a slightly different angle. What does the Minister have to say to my constituent who has another 3 years to wait for their case to be resolved, 3 years being unable to work, and 3 years of uncertainty hanging over her head?
Those sorts of delays that your constituent is experiencing is unacceptable. There is a consensus that the delays are unacceptable. There is a consensus we have to do something big and bold about it. This is a complex system, and it's why we've asked Sir Brian Leverson, with his expertise, to tell us how best we go about that. But we are going to have to get behind once-in-a-generation reform. But we're gripping it now. We're making record investment in criminal legal aid, in sitting days, but we'll need reform as well.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for this announcement on the Hillsborough Law. For decades, the families have carried the weight of this injustice and governments have failed to act. Today, the Hillsborough Law will be laid before this House, but this must not be another false start. So can the Deputy Prime Minister promise me that this will be the Hillsborough Law, that it will emerge stronger, not weaker from Parliament, and finally deliver justice for the 97.
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. I was pleased to sign the 2017 bill. I was pleased, along with the Prime Minister, to put my name to the 2019 amendment. I pay tribute to those families. I made a pledge to them yesterday. We will see no watering down of that bill. And can I just call to mind Khadija Say, who died in Grenfell Tower, and it's why it's such a privilege to steer this important law on behalf of the 97, but many others through this House.
Mr. Speaker, it's estimated that £80 million is locked in disabled children's funds, such as junior ISAs or child trust funds, with parents unable to access them on behalf of their children. My honourable friend, the member for Horsham's constituent, Andrew Turner, has met no fewer than 8 Justice Ministers and fought tirelessly for years to make the Court of Protection application process accessible for parents who are trying to access these funds for their disabled children. So will the Minister update the House on the Government's timeframe for simplifying this process?
I was very pleased to meet with Andrew Turner and the member for Horsham on this important issue. We've got to get that balance right between protecting vulnerable adults from financial abuse, but at the same time ensuring they can access assets that are theirs. It is complicated, it requires cross-government work, but I can assure her the impetus is there.
Mr. Speaker, further to the answers the ministers gave earlier on waiting lists in Crown Courts and Magistrates' Courts, there's also a large backlog in Coroners' Courts. I've got a constituent who's been waiting nearly 3 years for the inquest to be completed. What can be done to relieve the pressure on these families, grieving families who have been bereaved, to speed up this process?
I thank my honourable friend for that really important question. I have had several very productive conversations with the Chief Coroner looking at how we can ensure that the inquest process can be as quick as possible to ensure that the bereaved are supported and are not left traumatised waiting for their inquest. The bill we lay before Parliament today, the Hillsborough Law, has many parts of that are looking at how we can improve the inquest process and gives more powers to coroners, but we are looking at more we can do here in reform of inquests, and I will be looking forward to working with him and others on how we improve the coronial process.
Jess Brown for that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since 2021, Chichester Crown Court has been used as a nightingale court to catch up with the huge backlog of cases. But as court delays continue to slow down our justice system, will the Justice Secretary please give consideration to making Chichester Crown Court a permanent Crown Court, the only one in West Sussex?
Well, can I say, I know the Honourable Lady's constituency very well, so I will take a close look at the issue.
Okay. Josh Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Victims of sexual crime are understandably often traumatised. Can my honourable friend tell me what steps they're taking to ensure that the long-term sustainability of specialist support for these victims, such as the Calderdale Women's Centre, which provides support for victims in Calder Valley, particularly with long waits for justice and a high demand for trauma-informed support?
And I thank my honourable friend for that question and put on thanks my sincere gratitude to the Women's Centre for doing all they can to support victims of these crimes. We know that support services are a vital element to ensuring that victims and witnesses engage within the criminal justice system and are kept informed of all of the uptake of their trial. We have ring-fenced funding to protect these specialist support services. We are currently going through allocations process to ensure that we have support services at the front of our minds, and I'll be happy to keep him updated on this as it comes forward.
Dr Neil Shasrehurst.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. In July of this year, alongside a group of cross-party parliamentarians and others, I wrote to the then Lord Chancellor seeking a meeting regarding improving gatekeeping and ADR in family court matters. I haven't received a response. Can the Lord Chancellor give me the reassurance that such a meeting will take place?
Yes, I can.
You stand by.
Mr. Speaker, Barlinnie Prison is operating at 30% above capacity, and the Inspectorate of Prisons is strongly urging Scottish Government action before the £1 billion replacement is finally built in 2028. What steps are ministers taking to avoid the costly mistakes of the SNP Scottish Government in tackling the prison capacity crisis?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman. The SNP running down Scotland, of course, and wasting taxpayers' money on the new Barn Line prison, more than double the estimated cost. We're doing much better on this side of the border, and that's why we're working with colleagues to see what we can do about it.
Sarah Purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the new Secretary of State for Justice recognise Sharia law and Sharia courts in the United Kingdom? Yes or no?
Sharia law forms no part of the law of England and Wales, but in common with Christian, Jewish and other courts of faith where people choose to put themselves before those councils, that's part of the religious tolerance that is an important British value.
Can you just sit down? Chris Vence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister join me in paying tribute to officers of Harlow Police Station? During recess, I went on a ride-along and saw their professionalism and dedication firsthand.
100%, and that's not just because a lot of them are Spurs supporters.
Stephen Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prison officers at Whitemore Prison in my constituency have raised concerns that the recruitment process for staff is not working effectively. It's unduly bureaucratic. Will the Minister agree to write with me with his assessment and what changes could be made?
Yes, of course. I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for raising it.
Andy Slaughter, Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Lord Chancellor has read Baroness Harman's independent review of bullying, harassment and sexual harassment at the bar and on the bench, which was published last week. Its troubling findings are primarily for the bar itself and the judiciary to address. Can I ask whether the government supports the report's recommendations and what it can do to ensure they are implemented?
In typical fashion, Baroness Harman has conducted a thorough review into our professions and into the judiciary. The judiciary and bar are one of the prides of this country, but where there are unacceptable practices and unacceptable behaviours, it's right that we shine a light on them and demand that we do much, much better.
Sir Julian Lewis.
As ministers will know, some rogue builders take thousands of pounds from people, wreck their homes and leave them while they go on to do the same to other victims. Yet victims are told that no crime has been committed. Will the team look at the notion of fraud where a pattern of such behaviour can be evidenced?
I'm grateful for the Right Honourable Member for raising this. We will be consulting on a new victims code in due course to make sure that all of these crimes are captured so that we can support all victims, and I'd be happy to discuss this with him further.
Catherine Smith.
Mr. Speaker, for 6 years, Lancaster Courthouse has been surrounded by temporary fencing as it awaits maintenance. How much longer will my constituents have to wait?
As I said earlier, I'm very happy to meet with the Honourable Member to address this point and to give her the details that she requires.
For the best objection.
Mr. Speaker. The new Minister stated earlier that it has created 2,405 new prison places, but 1,468 of those are at H&P Millsike, part of the new prisons programme and announced by the previous Conservative government. The 10,000 additional prison places, state expansion, house blocks and refurbishment, the 10,000 additional prison places, state expansion category D, have all been downgraded from amber to red in the delivery confidence assessment due to the programme's key supplier entering administration. So what steps is the Justice Secretary taking to put the prison construction back on track?
The Honourable Member seems to be the last person defending the last Conservative government on prisons and law and order. The truth is that over 14 years, they built another 500 prison places. In 14 months, this Labour government has built 2,500 places. We're fixing the mess that you left behind.
Where are Miles?
Mr. Speaker, Voices, a domestic abuse charity in Bath, has created a guide to family court proceedings to support survivors to navigate the family courts without legal representation. This pilot was rolled out in the South West and Yorkshire. Will the government work with Voices to roll it out nationally?
I would be happy to meet with Voices to discuss this guidance. We've been working with organisations like CAFCAS and CAFCAS Cymru to ensure that victims and survivors have the best support available when they are navigating the family court process.
Dr. Danny Chambers.
Mr. Speaker, under current law, most instances of sexual abuse of animals are not offences. Now, not only are these acts despicable in themselves, given the proven link between animal abuse and child abuse, does the Minister agree that this dangerous gap is a missed opportunity to identify abusers before they go on to harm children?
I will commit to looking at this further.
Right, that completes questions. Right, point of order. Hang on a minute. Bad timing, Stephen. Stefan Currow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 16th of